Hello friends, welcome again. Friends, we as the students of literature must be familiar with different forms of literature. In literature, we have the forms like plays, novels, short stories, essays, biographies, autobiographies, and so on. And as far as the drama, the play is concerned, in English we have tragedies and comedies. So, friends, today we want to discuss what a comedy of manners is. We are going to discuss the definition and characteristics of comedy of manners. Friends, Horace Walpole has rightly said that life is a tragedy for those who feel, and life is a comedy for those who think. That means Horace Walpole wants to suggest that tragedy is a kind of a play which is more concerned with emotions. And on the other hand, comedy is a type of play which is more concerned with the thoughts, with the intellect. Tragedy appeals to our heart and comedy appeals to our mind. In English literature, friends, we have 5 different types of comedies, and they are romantic comedies written by William Shakespeare during the Elizabethan age, comedy of humor popularized by Ben Jonson again during the Elizabethan age, comedy of manners popularized by the writers of the Restoration period, sentimental comedy and tragic comedies. So we have these 5 different types of comedies. But in this lecture today we want to focus on the discussion of comedy of manners. Friends, comedy of manners enjoyed its heydays. Heydays means great days, good days. It enjoyed its heydays during the Restoration period. In my previous video, I told you that the period from 1660 to 1700 or sometimes 1710, this small period of 40-50 years is known as the age of Dryden. It is also known as the Restoration period. It was during this Restoration age that comedy of manners flourished, developed and became very much popular among the common readers. But before understanding what a comedy of manners is, we must consider what was the condition of theatres, before the heydays, before the good days of this comedy of manners. If you examine the period before Restoration age, the Puritans, they had banned the public performances of the plays. All the theatres were closed in the first half of the 17th century. But with the arrival of King Charles II in 1670, it is called the Restoration of King Charles II. When King Charles arrives to rule England, it gives a swing to the pendulum of comedy of manners. And decidedly, comedy of manners became so popular, that the ban which was done by the Puritans, ban on the entertainment, was all of a sudden, it evaporates, and the people started welcoming this new kind of comedy which was later on known as the comedy of manners. So friends, you just try and compare the period during Restoration age and the condition of drama before Restoration age. Before Restoration age, the plays were banned, no performances on the stage were allowed. Entertainment in public was banned by the Puritans. But when King Charles II arrives, then he relieves the ban and he allows this new kind of comedy which was later on known as the comedy of manners. Let's try and understand the definition of comedy of manners. Comedy of manners is a type of realistic and satirical type of comedy. Two terms are very important. Number one, all comedy of manners are full of realism. It gives the realistic picture of this society. And number two, satire. These comedy of manners are full of satire, right? So try to understand the definition. It is a type of realistic satirical comedy of the Restoration period. This period is 1660 to 1710, which questions and comments upon the manners and social conventions of a greatly sophisticated artificial society. Try to understand the definition, the second part of the definition. The first part of the definition talks about the two characteristics, realism and satire. Second part of the definition of comedy of manners tells us that these kind of plays, they exposed the manners, the behaviors of the sophisticated and artificial people. The sophisticated aristocratic people, the upper class people, their fashion, their intrigues, their plots, their love affairs, all these things are artistically presented and exposed in the comedy of manners. Okay. Now this comedy of manners is also known as the anti-sentimental comedy. Why? Because there are no sentiments in this comedy. It goes against the idea of sentimentalism. Here, love is presented as the central theme, but there are no emotions in the characters. So, love without emotions, that means lust, is the main point of discussion, main point of presentation in most of the comedy of manners, and that is why such comedies were also known as anti-sentimental comedies. In fact, the comedies written during this period, Restoration age, they stand exactly in opposition to the romantic comedies of William Shakespeare. Okay, William Shakespeare's comedies are by and large full of romanticism during the 16th century. But during the 17th century, the comedies written by the writers during the Restoration period, they are by and large, realistic by nature. So, realism and romance both are opposite ideas, and that's why, romantic comedies of Shakespeare, they stand in opposition to the comedy of manners of the Restoration age. Now, let's see how the comedy of manners began in this period. As I told you, with the arrival of King Charles II, the theatres were reopened and new theatrical performances began, which were later on known as comedy of manners. So the whole credit goes to the King Charles II because he releases the ban on the theatres and he allows the writers, he inspires, he encourages the writers to write new kind of plays, and as a result we have this new type of comedy known as comedy of manners. These plays were these plays presented mainly the manners and the ideals of the upper class or aristocratic people. Okay, the main topics which were the subject matter of this kind of comedy was they were religion, politics, love affairs, and so on. Okay, and it appealed, this kind of comedy appealed and entertained all the classes of the people, including the servant class, the middle class, and also the aristocratic upper class people of England. And John Dryden, who is the mouthpiece of his age, who is considered as the representative poet and critic of the Restoration period. He was the first writer to write this comedy of manners with his Wild Gallant. Wild Gallant is the title of the first comedy of manners written by John Dryden, but unfortunately it did not become so much popular. He later on wrote some more comedy of manners which were however very successful. Let's have a look at the important characteristics of comedy of manners. Number one, as I told you in the beginning, unemotional treatment of love and sex is presented in such comedies. Here, love affairs are presented, but emotions are not found, and that's why they are known as anti-sentimental comedies. Number two, such comedies are rich with wit, intelligence, and satire. When we just now we discussed the definition of comedy of manners, that time I told you the two important characteristics which are wit and satire. Okay, so it appeals our intelligence, right, and they are full of satire. Number three, here in such comedies, heroines, for the first time, in the history of English literature, heroines are given more importance than the heroes. Okay, fashion of the time is mainly presented realistically. The fashion of the upper class women, the upper class men, they were, such fashions were realistically pictured by the writers in such comedies. The manners, the behavior of the upper class people, their intrigues, their plots, their quarrels among themselves, all such things were the subject matter of the comedy of manners. Realism, social analysis, and satire, they all mix up together to give a new face to the comedies. Moreover, most of the women characters presented in such comedies, they were flower girls. Friends, flower girls are the titles given to the married women who have some illicit relationship, extramarital relationship with other men. Okay, so such flower girls were also found as the characters in such comedies, and that's why their love affairs were presented, and that's why such comedies were full of immoralism. Immorality is pertinent in such comedies. Politics, religion, and love affairs, they were the subject matters of comedy of manners. and moreover, the writers of such comedies, they did not focus much on the development of plot construction. They did not focus much on developing their stories, rather, they focused more on writing more and more witty dialogues. So, witty dialogues are so much important for them rather than plots. However, remember Aristotle said that plot is the soul of tragedy. But the writers of Comedy of Manners, they ignored this idea and they focused on the dialogues more than the plots. Let's have a look at some popular comedy of manners as found in English literature. Sir George Etheridge wrote the comedy of manner entitled as The Man of Maud, published in 1676. Wycherley also published The Country Wife in 1675. William Congreve, an important writer of the comedy of manner, he wrote The Way of the World in 1700. Later on, during the 18th century also, this comedy of manners became so popular, and the writers like Oliver Goldsmith, She Stoops to Conquer, published in 1773, and Sheridan wrote The School for Scandal and published it in 1777. These are some few examples of comedy of manners. We have hundreds of more comedy of manners written in English literature. So friends, before I finish this video, let's sum up the whole discussion by saying that comedy is a type of play which appeals to our intellect, which appeals to our mind. In English literature, we have 5 types of comedies, right? And comedy of manners is one type which became popular during the Restoration period. Okay, and comedy of manners mainly presented the picture of the aristocratic society, the upper class people, and they were full of satire, realism, and immorality. So friends, here I finish this video. I hope you like this video, and if you really like this video, please share this video among your friends. Thank you very much.